Hey y'all, it's David Ducker coming back at you, and today we're going to be talking about setting the scene. We'll be talking about establishing shots. This is something that should be like super elementary, like one of the first things you ever learn or start doing. But I've really noticed a lot of people have not been doing that. I've really noticed this lately. And some of them are new players, and clearly a lot of books don't have a how to GM section, so these new players aren't learning it. So I just thought I'd do a video about it. It should be a short video because it's super elementary. So before you do anything in your story, in your world, in character, you have to establish the scene. You have to set the scene. Usually it's up to the GM to do that. The GM will say, we soar over the Black Forest. We see an artificial hill built up with a palisade around it of wooden spikes. It's this huge timber construction coming in through the window. This large drafty window. We can see tapestries on the wooden walls, a four-poster bed, chests, servants, silver pieces set around, a carafe of water, a flagon of wine, bearskin rugs. It's cold and damp inside, but it has a safe, homey feeling for its occupants nonetheless. So you set the scene. Where are we? What do we see? What do we smell, hear, taste around us? And then you can do whatever you're going to do. All right, so you always set the scene. Whether you're in a castle, a dungeon, a spaceship, crossing a bridge, if you're in your kitchen shooting a YouTube video, you got to set the scene. In a film, you'll often see there's a shot of the city, and then it'll cut to like an apartment somewhere in that city, or there will be a shot of a little French village with the tile roofs and smoke drifting up from the chimney, and you'll see horse-drawn carriages moving through the streets, kicking up dust on the cobblestones, and then it'll cut to one of these little chateaus. You don't just start in the chateau. You do the establishing shot, and then you cut in or you zoom in. In film, zooming in costs money, which is why they don't do it as often. In an RPG, you're not constrained by budget at all, so you can zoom in, zoom out, rewind time if you want. You can do all kinds of camera tricks that would be very expensive to do in real life, but you can describe them. So as a GM, GMs aren't usually as bad about it, but I've seen some GMs and they just say, the king turns to you and says, "How will you help me stop the ravening orcs?" And, I look at the GM and I'm like, well, where are we? What does the king look like? Can you set the scene? Is it a Mod and Bailey, that wooden castle I described? Or is it a drum castle with round parapets and a double curtain wall and a moat? Is it up on a cliff? Is it in the middle of a city? Is it carved out of a forest? Is it on a flying island? Set the scene for me. Where am I geographically? What's the architecture like? What do I smell, see, hear, taste? How's it decorated? What's on that tapestry? Is it the history of his family? Is it a religious scene? And that can tell me something about the person who decorated the place. If it's a tapestry that depicts his family, it'll tell me about him because he cares for his family in some way. But it can also tell me even more because it's about his family. So I can actually look at the tapestry and it's about his father getting executed for being a pagan. And it's like, who would make a tapestry about that? Well, that can tell me something about the psychology of this guy. So the scene will tell you a lot before anyone speaks. And so that's all the GM section. Set the scene as a GM. As a player, You need to set the scene by describing your character. And sometimes where he is, in the Lost Colonies, I asked my players, we see the ship. It's a heavy frigate. It's flying in from the outer void, the depths of space. We see the battle station it's heading towards. We zoom in on the frigate. Where do we find your character? So what do you look like, and how have you decorated your cabin? Now, as a player, you get to say how your cabin is decorated. Is it big, small, bright, dark, hot, cold? Whatever your character would do, and that'll tell us something about your character. So you don't always have that opportunity. You don't always have a cabin, an apartment, a war horse that you get to describe. What kind of car your character drives. You don't always have those tools, but you do always have what does he look like. And a lot of players seem to forget this or be negligent about it. One of the most important things about any character is how old are they? Is he 90? Is he 9? Is he somewhere in between? That's tremendously important. And then, of course, your character's gender, height, build, fashion, if he has any scars, if he's tanned, how he styled his hair. You need to go into a full description. Set the scene. Who are we talking to? If you are playing, if you have this big fat character in these voluminous silk robes, and the robes are cut to try to conceal his fat, and he's got all of this jewelry around him and different silk cutouts and slashed satin sleeves on there and slippers on his feet. You can smell the perfume. He's smelling a perfume and just a little bit of mutton. You think like he's got some mutton grease on his beard, and his beard's all curled and waxed, and it's he's got this crazy hairstyle, and it's all pulled up in braids, and he's got ribbons and sequins up there, and he's got like eyeliner, and you think he's wearing makeup, and if you have this character and he starts talking about, oh my boy, the importance of modesty, the importance of moderation, my boy, that you must deny yourself some of the pleasures of life, that you may indulge your spirit to grow inside oneself. Coming from this big, fat, pompous, over-decorated character, the dialogue takes on a totally different meaning. If you had like an old man in a horsehair shirt, wearing nothing else, with blisters and calluses on his feet because he doesn't have shoes, he's sun-baked, he's weathered, he's rough, he's limping around on a staff, and he has like a bowl on a rope around his neck, his begging bowl. He's only allowed to accept a single morsel of food from each person. Then he can eat that, so he's so skinny. If that character comes up to you and says, my boy, the importance of moderation cannot be understated. We must deny our body to grow inside, to set our souls free. We must deny the flesh. That's a completely different meaning. Almost the same dialogue. What they said is the same. The context, completely different. And if you haven't set the scene, there's no context. I have no idea, I know what he said. I don't know what he means by that without seeing him. Even if I do see him, I might not know exactly what he meant, but it's a step closer. So as a player, always set the scene. Who are we talking to? As a GM, always set the scene. Where are we? And who are we talking to? All of your NPCs need a full description as well. And I've just seen a lot of negligence on that lately. As a player, I always ask, what does the guy look like? What does your character look like? What does your character look like? What does the room look like? We come out of the castle. What does the city look like? What does the town? I'm always asking questions. But I shouldn't have to. The GM should be providing all of this detail himself. And no one is perfect. but there's a lot of people who aren't making an effort, and it's a big waste of time, and it's a show of lack of caring or lack of education. So I'm doing this video so people can be educated. Now they have no excuse. So if you don't describe where we are and who we're talking to, now I know that you don't care, because my video is out there and surely everyone will watch it and have access to it, or everyone important. So those are my thoughts on setting the scene, why it's important, how to do it. Let me know in the comments below if you have any thoughts on that at all. And until I see you again, good day and good gaming.